Hi, my name is Alex Israel. I'm from Los Angeles, California, and I'm here today to share some insight and information about my exhibition, #AlexIsrael, at the Astrup Fearnley Museum in Oslo, Norway. So I decided to call the exhibition #AlexIsrael. The hashtag is something that we use in digital culture today, in social media, to kind of aggregate images, aggregate or collect things that all relate to one another, or that have a kind of common theme, and that's very similar to the concept of an exhibition. It's also a kind of acknowledgement of the way imagery spreads in today's world on social media, and it's also a way of kind of turning myself into some kind of object. And I also liked it because it was concise and it was really simple, and I think it just worked. When I was asked to do an exhibition here, the most daunting, overwhelming task was, well, how am I going to fill the space, the atrium space and the mezzanine space, which are very large, airy spaces. And I thought that, in my experience, the things that kind of fill space aren't necessarily, fill space the best, aren't necessarily just objects, but maybe concepts or ideas or feelings, or kind of, affect people metaphysically. And I thought, well, what if I brought some of the California dream, that thing that inspires me, that inspires people to come live in Los Angeles, and I brought that into the museum? Maybe that would be a way of filling the space. And so I thought, well, how can I do that? How can I take that dream and distill it, or use kind of some form of object to kind of create it as an experience for the viewer? I was also thinking about the architecture of the space, and the way the space is designed. You walk down a series of steps to enter the main gallery, and I always feel like you shouldn't have to descend to look at art. You should go up to look at art, or you should go straight into a space to look at art. So what we did, combining these two ideas, was we made a recreation of the Paradise Cove Pier. It's a pier in Malibu that I've always loved. It featured in the first photorealistic painted self-portrait that I made, and it also featured in the Britney Spears Sometimes video. Well, the pier, it kind of is a place people go, and they stand out at the sea, and they think about opportunities and possibilities, and it's a really optimistic kind of experience to be out there in Paradise Cove, looking out at the sunset or looking out at the sky as it changes in the water. So I wanted to kind of translate that experience into the show, and to allow people to enter the space in a different way. So we reconstructed the pier, we brought it here, we created a sky backdrop mural that envelops it in Los Angeles twilight sky, to kind of give people the experience of the Los Angeles dream. The original graphic design image of the self-portrait was made as a logo for As It Lays, which was a project I did and finished in 2012. And when I was making the project, which takes the form of a talk show as a way of creating contemporary portraits, I was thinking a lot about Alfred Hitchcock, and thinking about things that he said about actors. Many actors were the subjects that I interviewed for As It Lays, and he talked about them in a way that really objectified them. So for better or worse, it's a way that Hollywood continues to think about its people. And so thinking about that, and kind of in homage to him and his spirit, I decided to emulate what he did in the opening credits of Alfred Hitchcock Presents, which is that he turned into a graphic logo of his profile. So for the opening credits of As It Lays, we created this graphic logo of my profile, and my videographic self turned into this flat image. So from that point, the graphic image just kind of stuck. I started to use it as my profile picture on Facebook, and I started to play with it on the computer and to experiment with it and to change the colors that I had used to make it. And ultimately I decided that I wanted to bring it into the world as an object. And that was a kind of tricky thing because I didn't know how to translate it from the digital into the physical. I knew that I wanted it to have a really strong California feeling. So I started thinking about vernacular materials in Southern California. And the materials that came to mind were those that are used to make surfboards and custom cars, fiberglass and airbrushed acrylic paint. So that's what we did. I say we, but I figured out a way to do it with a team at Warner Brothers. And we built a mold to make panels out of fiberglass, and we developed a technique to spray them with acrylic airbrushing. It was important to me that they looked a lot like signs too. So that was another element that went into the kind of creation of the first self-portrait objects. And they've developed since. They've gotten larger in scale, and now they feature kind of photographic landscape imagery in the frame of my profile. And that was really just about kind of literalizing what I'm thinking about. Whatever's passing through my head or running through my mind is now just being shown in it as a painting. In 2013, I was asked by a nonprofit organization called LAX Art to propose an idea for a billboard on Sunset Boulevard that's generally used by the city of West Hollywood for public art. My proposal was accepted, and my self-portrait logo went up on this massive billboard right above the House of Blues on the Sunset Strip. This image of this work in this landscape has now become kind of the newest image, the newest work in this ongoing series of self-portraits. What I like so much about this piece is that there's so much history in it, so many kind of markers and touchstones of Los Angeles culture, from the billboards to the Sunset Tower Hotel, which is a great old Art Deco building, to the Griffith Observatory in the distance on the corner. And in the foreground is the Hyatt Hotel, which is now called the Andaz, but when I was in high school it was called the Hyatt, and that's where we stayed after prom night. And then there's also the House of Blues. There's the Saddle Ranch, which has the mechanical bull. The House of Blues, just to go back for a second, is actually closed. So it's not going to be there much longer. And there's also the old site of the Virgin Megastore, which is now, I think, a Crunch gym. So lots of things that I kind of grew up with or have, been looking at my whole life are in that painting. As It Lays was really a way of making portraits. When I sat down and thought long and hard about how to make portraits of people in Los Angeles, I was thinking a lot about Oprah. It was Oprah's last season, and everyone was watching the Oprah Winfrey Show and talking about it. And I had never watched Oprah before, and I felt like if I was ever going to participate in that conversation, I should probably start watching it, and I had one season left to do so. So I started, and I was fascinated by it, and I thought it was great. And I really loved the way that Oprah kind of was able to pull kind of certain human things out of her subjects. Of course, when people were on the Oprah show, they were always promoting a new project, a new book, or a new movie, or a new album. But in between the questions about what they were doing, Oprah would get little bits of their personalities to shine through. And so I thought, well, what if I just made a talk show that was only about trying to get those little slice of life bits to happen on camera? What would that be? Would that be kind of a way of creating someone's likeness, representing someone's likeness in the traditional sense of portraiture? So I wanted also to kind of celebrate the culture of LA. And the people that I asked to be on the talk show were all people who I felt made really significant contributions to the cultural fabric of Los Angeles culture, past and present. So in order to kind of execute the project, I decided to build a set in my studio. And I had been given a residency, a studio, for just over a year and a half at the Pacific Design Center, which is a kind of iconic Los Angeles building in the middle of Hollywood. And I started looking at kind of talk show sets to see how they were designed and how they were constructed. I knew that there was going to be a backdrop, and there was going to be kind of intermediary backdrop, which I learned was called a flat. And then there was going to have to be a stage. And my friend Willow, who designs a lot of staging for various events and concerts, said you have to have a carpeted riser. So I built this carpeted riser in the shape of an oval, and I got 2 old chairs from my father's office, and that he wasn't using, that were in his storage, and I decided to design this series of flats and this backdrop. For the backdrop, I knew it had to be a sunset of some kind. So I picked that moment in the LA sky, which is so particular, which is twilight, when the whole sky is pink and blue. And I went to the internet, which was the best resource, to try to figure out where I could have such a background made and painted. And we did some research, and we figured out that there were a few places left that still painted backdrops, and talked to these places, and went and met with the scenic artist at Warner Brothers. And Warner Brothers was really excited about doing this because there wasn't a lot of need anymore for scenic painting, and the scenic art department wasn't as busy as it had been because of the use now of giant printers. So I ended up working with them, and the collaboration went so well that I asked them if they would help me with flats. And so the flats were made in the shapes of arches. And the reason I decided to use the arch shape was because it's kind of the fundamental architectural shape of Southern California's vernacular, which derives from Spanish architecture. When you're in 4th grade in Los Angeles, you make a model of one of the California state missions. And the missions were the very first kind of more permanent settlements that were constructed all along the 101 highway up and down the coast of California. So these mission-style arches came out of that, and I decided to make them textured like stucco, because that's the material that's most kind of prevalent across the landscape of LA, and it kind of derives from the adobe that the missions were originally built out of. And in terms of the colors for the flats, again, I was looking at the sky, the LA sky, the sunsets, the kind of blazing reds and oranges and yellows and pinks, and kind of applying them to the surface to look both like the sky but also like theatrical lighting, which we didn't really have in the studio. So these kind of individual components, the sky backdrop, the flats, and of course, as we already discussed, the self-portrait logo, all kind of came out of As It Lays and came out of the design of that project and became kind of bodies of artworks that would be presented in another context. So the lens sculptures are related to another project, which is Freeway Eyewear. And Freeway Eyewear is a sunglasses company and brand that I began when I was kind of getting ready to go back to school and to study art and to become, a more professionalized artist. I wanted to make something, and I was really paralyzed, kind of existentially paralyzed. I didn't know what to do at the time. I had worked a lot in the art world, and I didn't feel ready to kind of assert myself as an artist in a traditional sense of making kind of painting or sculpture or video. So I decided that I wanted to make something that wouldn't be precious, that anybody could conceivably get. And so I was thinking about what to do, and the thing that struck me was that I needed sunglasses, and I had never found any that I liked, and they were really such a symbol of Los Angeles culture, because everybody needs them when you're driving. There's so much sunlight, and And they also kind of represent something that has to do with Hollywood and celebrity and kind of wearing a very conspicuous disguise that that people do when they want to be noticed and when they don't want to be noticed. And so the way in which the brand was created was really similar to how other aspects of my work were developing and being formed. I was really looking at the history of Southern California as a kind of way of branding the product. There's something about sunglasses, the very basic components of them, that was really kind of compelling to me, which was that they're just frames and lenses. And the lens is such a kind of major aspect of Los Angeles culture, because it also is that thing which captures video, which captures film, and of course the frame is the thing in which those pictures reside. And so for me, the sunglasses were almost like a camera, or a way of contextualizing things, like the frame of the gallery, or the lens of the viewer. And so at a certain point, I really wanted to kind of deconstruct them, to look closely at the details. And I popped out a sunglass lens, and I imagined it on a monumental scale. And for me, that was kind of a dream sculpture that I always wanted to do. It was something that I knew would refer back to the history of abstract sculpture in Southern California, to artists like Dwayne Valentine, Craig Kaufman, John McCracken, and Larry Bell, who used transparent surfaces and high-gloss surfaces and materials that were industrial and fetishistic to create these beautiful, sublime kind of objects. And I wanted to pay homage to that tradition, and also to kind of make this sort of monument to LA coolness. Another tradition in Los Angeles art history is the text painting. And we have this, it's kind of one of our most kind of famous exports. We have artists like Ed Ruscha and John Baldessari and Barbara Kruger and Larry Johnson and Alexis Smith and Raymond Pettibone, who have all incorporated text into their work. And I think it's a very natural impulse to want to do that when you live in LA, because text is really everywhere. It's part of the experience of driving around the city, is that you see advertisements and billboards and movie posters and signs, and these texts are just kind of, I don't know, they really are everywhere. So I wanted to figure out a way to kind of enter that conversation or kind of deal with that tradition, and I didn't know how. At the same time, I was working on the script for my movie, SPF 18, and I had been working on it with this writer, this man named Michael Burke, who was the creator of Baywatch, and we were having such a great time and experience going back and forth, and I kept thinking, wow, I love working with a writer. Like, maybe there's another way I can work with the writer in some other form or capacity that could potentially inform my work, or another body of work, or the creation of actual physical artworks. So I kept thinking about these two ideas, this idea of the tradition of the LA text painting, and this idea of wanting to collaborate again with a writer. And it dawned on me that maybe I should just work with a writer to create text paintings. And my very favorite LA writer, and my favorite writer, is Bret Easton Ellis. And I had interviewed Bret. He'd been one of the subjects of As It Lays. I had interviewed him for a magazine before as well. We'd become friendly, so I asked him if he would be interested in working on this project with me to create texts, which I would then turn into paintings. And he was excited about it. And so I had the opportunity then to work with one of my heroes, and to create these paintings that were also like fictions in a way. And so the collaboration began with Bret and I talking, and he created these short texts, and he created them out of this kind of world that he imagined, with various characters and locations throughout Los Angeles. And we started to edit down the text, and he and I would meet, we'd go through what he had written, and we'd pick our favorite ones, and then I would bring them back to the studio and turn them into these, I would lay them out as these kind of text-based images, images with text overlaid on top of them. And I would collect these kind of stock images of Los Angeles and collect various fonts. And over time, they just developed and evolved into the group of works that we've produced together.